I didn't think I'd ever step through that front door again. The moment my sister's voice cut through the coffee shop chatter, asterisk, you're a waste of space, Alex. No one will ever take you seriously. Go back to that hippie stuff and stop embarrassing us. The detonation that set my whole life on fire, it wasn't just a harsh word, it was the public dismissal of everything I'd built, the final nail hammered into the coffin of the career I'd slaved for at a world-renowned architecture firm. An anonymous rival forged a plagiarism claim, and the firm threw me out like yesterday's blueprints. The humiliation was a physical ache, a bruised pride that made every breath feel like I was inhaling ash. I walked out of that office with nothing but a battered sketchbook, a handful of recycled material samples, and a single stubborn thought: I will prove that safety and sustainability are not luxuries. They are necessities. I left the city that night, the rain slashing against the windows of the bus, and I didn't look back. Painful departure. My mother's kitchen table, where I'd once laid out elaborate floor plans over mashed potatoes, now held only a single cold cup of tea. Aunt Lena stared at my sketch of an earthquake-proof house made from reclaimed shipping containers and laughed. "What are you, a mad scientist?" My cousins slid their phones across the table, showing off their glossy corporate jobs. Their glossy resumes as if to say, we're the ones who matter. I packed my life into a battered van, turned the engine on, and drove out of town with a single suitcase of dreams and a pocket full of trash bags filled with salvaged wood, recycled steel, and a handful of discarded solar panels. Every night I camped under star-filled skies, sketching in the dim light, building miniature models from the very materials people called junk. The world ridiculed me for calling it architecture. My family called it a waste of time. I called it purpose. The relentless pursuit. For 3 years I lived off the grid, traveling from abandoned industrial sites to flood-prone riverbanks, offering my designs to villages that could barely afford a roof. I worked alone, hand-drawing every wall, running calculations on napkins while the wind howled around me. The first time I erected a prototype, a 2-story home perched on a reclaimed steel frame, its walls woven from recycled plastic bottles, locals stared, some pointed, some scoffed. "Look at that weird guy with his garbage houses," they muttered. But the earthquakes came. One after another, the ground shook and the houses built by conventional contractors crumbled, while my structures swayed like reeds in a storm, then stood firm. A farmer's family survived a 7.2 magnitude quake in the very house I designed from the back of my van. When the news spread, the headlines read, "Recycled material homes save dozens in deadly quake." The world began to listen. Soon, a non-profit approached me with a modest grant to pilot a larger project. I accepted, but not because I wanted money. I wanted a platform. I formed a small crew of like-minded builders, engineers, and carpenters who shared my obsession with turning waste into safety. Together we turned barren, ash-laden lots on the outskirts of a disaster-prone town into thriving eco-villages. Each home was a mini ecosystem: solar roofs, rainwater harvesters, vertical gardens that filtered air, and most importantly, seismic foundations that moved with the earth instead of fighting it. People began to call me the fringe eco-hippie with a sneer, but the same townspeople who once mocked me now queued at my doorsteps, eyes wide with hope. The ridicule turned into reverence, but I never let it swell my head. I remembered my sister's laugh, my mother's sigh, and I let those memories fuel every bolt I tightened, the arduous ascension and profound triumph. 5 years after that bus ride out of town, my company, Resilient Roots, had designed over 2,000 homes across 3 countries. Our patented flex frame system had been studied by UNESCO and cited in UN climate reports. We turned a derelict warehouse into a community hub that doubled as an emergency shelter. The most rewarding moment came when a flood receded from a village we'd built, leaving behind only our homes, still standing, still dry. Families stepped out, hugged each other, and whispered, "We thought you were crazy. Now we see that you saved us." The school board invited me back to my hometown to give a talk on sustainable disaster planning. When I walked onto the auditorium stage, I saw my cousin, now a lawyer in a sharp suit, sitting in the front row, his eyes fixed on me as if I were a myth. The old town hall where I'd once been ridiculed was now filled with students, teachers, and elders, all eager to hear how trash could become life. Cathartic return and poetic justice. The day I returned home, the house where my family had once mocked me stood empty, its windows boarded, its porch sagging. My mother opened the door, her face a mixture of surprise, guilt, and something I could only call awe. She stepped forward, eyes wet, and whispered, "Alex, we had no idea, we thought we were protecting you." My sister, who had once called me a disgrace, stood in the doorway, clutching a photo album filled with pictures of my childhood drawings of houses that looked like they belonged in a sci-fi movie. She stared at the sleek solar-paneled model of a home I held in my hands and said, "I'm sorry, we were wrong." I didn't need their apologies. The real justice unfolded when I led them on a tour of the new eco-village we had built just outside town. As we walked among the thriving gardens, the children ran past the resilient houses, laughing as they tested the swing set anchored to a flex frame designed to sway without breaking. I pointed to a wall made of reclaimed tires, now transformed into a sturdy, insulated panel. "Look," I said, "what was once waste is now the backbone of safety for hundreds." The silence that fell over the crowd was heavy, not with judgment but with realization. My family saw the faces of people who had survived because of what we had built, heard the testimonies of a mother who held her newborn under a roof that never cracked, felt the steady hum of solar panels powering a school. Their eyes, once filled with contempt, now glistened with respect and a painful awareness of the cruelty they'd once shown, the cathartic impact. Walking back home that night, I watched the lights flicker on in each house, a warm amber glow cutting through the darkness. I thought about the night I left, the rain slashing against the bus windows, the way my heart pounded with both fear and resolve. I remembered how my mother's voice had trembled when she said, "You're going to ruin everything." I realized that the ridicule I endured was not a reflection of my worth, but a mirror held up to their own fear of the unknown. Their mockery was a catalyst, urging me to dig deeper, to build higher, to turn every scoff into a foundation stone. Karma, I've learned, isn't a cosmic ledger that punishes. It's a asterisk mirror asterisk. It shows us what we give and what we receive. My family's betrayal was the raw material, and my perseverance was the fire that forged it into something unbreakable. The triumph wasn't just the houses, the patents, the accolades. It was the moment an abandoned house turned into a sanctuary, and the moment my own blood recognized that love can be rebuilt on the strongest of foundations, asterisk sustainability, resilience, and forgiveness. The final lesson I carry now, written into every line of my designs and every breath I take, is simple. When the world tells you you're ridiculous, remember that the most outrageous ideas often become the safest shelters. My journey taught me that reputations can be shattered, but purpose, once rooted in genuine intent, can grow into a forest that shelters generations. I returned home not as a prodigal son seeking redemption, but as a living testament that what we mock today may be the salvation of tomorrow. And as I sit on the porch of my childhood home, now a community center powered by the same sustainable tech I once dreamed of, I hear my mother's voice, soft and apologetic, whisper, "We were wrong, Alex. We were so wrong." I smile because the only response I ever needed was the one I gave myself years ago, under the rain-splashed bus window. I will build, I will protect. I will prove that even the most ridiculous dream can become the safest reality, and the world at last is listening.